What did I just witness? The air in the room was heavy, permeated with an antiseptic smell that mingled with a faint metallic tinge, as if death itself exuded its presence. I had been caring for this man for more than 3 years, watching his body slowly crumble. How every breath was a losing battle. That night, its end was imminent. His gasps were irregular, a harsh, breathy sound that filled the silence. Because of her past of opioid abuse, her receptors were depleted, and the hospice nurse had prescribed 0.5 milligrams of morphine every hour to appease the torment in her lungs. For 2 hours, I stood by him, surrounded only by the ticking of the clock and those agonizing breaths. I thought he was about to leave, so I opened the front door, letting the icy night air invade the space like an invisible bridge to his soul. But in the last 3 minutes, something changed. His eyes snapped open, wild, empty, and yet fixed on something beyond the threshold. His head turned to the left with a jerky movement, and his face transformed into a mask of wild fury. Eyebrows furrowed, jaw tensed and loosened, teeth grinding in a disturbing echo. He seemed to be looking at someone, or something, who filled him with a visceral hatred, a fire that his dying body must not be able to contain. That rage twisted into something more sinister. His lips retracted, showing yellowish teeth, and for a fleeting moment, his eyes seemed to flash with an evil light. The other caregiver, motionless next to me, let out a gasp. "He's going to growl," he murmured, his voice breaking. But then, as quickly as it had arisen, the fury faded. His face relaxed, his eyes closed, and his head fell into a serene repose. He was dead. The silence that followed was a crushing weight. We froze, caught up in disbelief at what we had just witnessed. It wasn't just terminal agitation. It was something else, something that was felt, ungodly, demonic. The drive home was a blur, with that image of his twisted face etched into my mind, a reminder that, perhaps, in his final moments, he had faced something that didn't belong in this world. I heard a baby crying outside my window. The night was a blanket of unnatural stillness, the kind of silence that makes every sound resonate like a threat. I live in a neighborhood where time seems to stand still, where my neighbors are gone, and the only movement is the occasional murmur of a distant car. It was 12:40 in the morning, and I was immersed in my music, the headphones letting out the faint hum of the refrigerator. Then, a high-pitched scream ripped through the air, so loud that it pierced my ears and chilled my blood. I thought it was one of my cats, but when I looked up, I saw them on the windowsill, stiff, their ears alert, staring at the blackness outside. I took off my headphones, and the sound came back. The cry of a baby, clear, close, right outside my window. But there was something strange about him, something that didn't fit. It was too perfect, a rhythmic, almost artificial lament that resonated with unsettling precision. My stomach tightened, a visceral fear coursing up my throat. I grabbed my phone to call a friend, seeking refuge in a human voice, but when dialing, the signal and Wi-Fi collapsed. The crying persisted, relentless, each note digging into my skin like icy needles. I restarted the phone with trembling hands, and when the call finally connected, the sound instantly ceased, as if something had cut off its existence. I can't erase that cry from my mind. They say that the screams in the night are omens, warnings of death or misfortune. My walls are thin. I would have heard footsteps or an engine if anyone had been there. But there was nothing, only an oppressive emptiness. I didn't look outside. I didn't move. I just wrote to my friend, my heart in my throat, wondering what shadow had brushed my window that night. I reached for a cushion in the dark. It wasn't a cushion. It was a few years ago, on a winter visit to my parents' house. They had transformed the garage into a warm studio, with heated floors and soft carpets. That night, he had drunk a little wine, just enough to make his eyelids feel heavy. It was 2 a.m., and I was on the phone with my boyfriend, letting the words fill the silence. The room was plunged into absolute darkness, a black so dense that it devoured any glimmer of light. I lay down on the carpet, exhausted, and my hand brushed something beside me, a dark shape that, in the gloom, I took for a cushion. Without thinking, I turned and hugged him. At that moment, everything changed. The air became frigid, a chill that penetrated to the bone, and the room seemed to sink into an abyss. An alien sadness enveloped me, not my own, but ancient, overwhelming, as if I had touched the soul of an eternal lament. It was not subtle. It was a blow, a tide of despair that drowned me in seconds. This echo that made my skin stand on end. The next day, I returned in the sunlight, looking for an explanation, an out-of-place cushion, a deceptive shadow. But there was nothing. The space was empty, the carpet intact. Was my mind exhausted playing a trap on me? Or did I touch something lurking in the dark, something that was not to be disturbed? That memory still haunts me, an icy whisper in my memory,